Gaze collapse and the engines of narcissistic disintegration. Gaze collapse as conceived within the M-PIT framework and expanded through Vaknin's psychodynamic model is not simply the end of looking, it is the fracture of authorship itself. The gaze in narcissistic structures is libidinal and symbolic, not merely visual. It projects identity into the object and then governs that object's meaning through sustained investment. This talk traces the structural disintegration of that investment via the five energetic stages of narcissistic relating: object cathexis, hypercathexis, hypocathexis, decathexis, and anticathexis. As Sam teaches us, the narcissistic gaze is not rooted in recognition, but in extraction. Cold empathy, a non affective scanning of others for traits, weaknesses, and supply potential, allows the narcissist to spot and audition victims. This early process corresponds with object cathexis, a preliminary psychic investment in the other, not for their humanity, but for their utility. The gaze attaches with transactional intention, setting the stage for shared fantasy. In the M-pit structure, hypercathexis marks the full flooring of the shared fantasy. The narcissist floods the object with libidinal energy, offering a distorted mirror that reflects not the true self of the victim, but their idealized or fantasized self. This mirroring structure seduces the survivor into compliance, not through domination, but through perceived intimacy. They feel seen, but only through the narcissist's projected fantasy. This hypercathexis anchors the survivor's ego externally, detaching them from internal authorship. As the narcissist grows bored or threatened, the energetic investment begins to wane. Hypocathexis is not full withdrawal, it is the beginning of abandonment disguised as detachment. The survivor senses confusion, emotional dissonance, and subtle disdain. The gaze cools, the fantasy remains, but its fuel is depleting. Survivors often describe this phase as walking on eggshells. They still orient around the gaze, even as it recedes. Decathexis is the violent withdrawal of all libidinal energy. The gaze is not merely gone, it is revoked. This initiates what MPIT terms collapsed induced psychotic regression. The survivor, once psychically co authored by the gaze, is now symbolically annihilated. This moment, gaze collapse, is the true rupture point. It is the symbolic severance of existence within the shared fantasy. Nothing follows this withdrawal but freefall. Survivors experience derealization, depersonalization, and psychic fragmentation. They are no longer seen and thus no longer real. To prevent any re-emergence of former attachment, the narcissist activates anticathexis, psychic defenses that block the return of care, remorse, or empathy. This final energetic phase marks the inversion. The survivor, once idealized, is now discarded and actively degraded. They enter the loop of inverse mirrored reflexive apathy, haunted by a cold, mirrored version of their own suffering, looping through shame, self-hatred, and longing. The gaze, once libidinal, becomes anti-libidinal, weaponized absence. And the narcissist carries out the anti-cathexis by reinvesting that energy into a new object, into a new fantasy. Dr. Alan Shore's effective neuroscience supports this collapse sequence. The right brain mechanisms responsible for attunement and affect regulation are shaped by the caregiver gaze. When that gaze is cold, absent, or punishing, the child cannot stabilize their sense of self. In adulthood, the collapse of the narcissistic gaze reactivates these early ruptures. Survivors experience limbic dysregulation, trauma loops, and regression, not as metaphor, but as neurobiological fact. The gaze fracture is affective, symbolic, and neural. Gaze collapse is not just an emotional withdrawal, it is a symbolic decreation of the other. It unhooks the survivor from the energetic structure that once authored them. Vaknin's model reveals this as a deliberate structural sequence. Cold empathy to cathexis to psychic decathexis. MPIT builds on this, showing how the withdrawal of the gaze precedes mirrored psychic inversion, collapse, and survival only through symbolic reintegration. The gaze does not just see, it makes real. When it vanishes, it takes meaning with it. Peace out. Loads of love.